This is how I found out my childhood best friend was a ghost. I grew up with a girl named Katie Wells. I lived on a farm, and Katie lived with an old woman named Irene in the next house over. Katie and Irene weren't related, but whenever I asked Katie about her, she would just change the subject. It seemed like they never got along because they never talked to each other. Katie seemed really sheltered, and I thought it was because Irene wouldn't let her do much. Whenever I would talk about boys, or a new celebrity crush I had, or even a new popular TV show, she never knew what I was referring to. A while later, my mom ended up quitting her job and working from home, so she didn't take me to Katie's house to have Irene watch me anymore. I remember wanting to go over to see Katie, and I asked my mom a few times, but she always said no. I eventually made new friends, and me and Katie grew apart. A couple years went by, and I started to realize I never saw Katie around anymore. She used to talk about her dad, Pat, a lot, so I assumed she went to live with him. I saw Irene outside one day, and I asked her how Katie was doing and where she'd been. However, she just looked at me like I was crazy. She told me that she had no idea who Katie was and that no one has ever lived with her. I told Irene about how we used to play together at her house, and she gave me a weird look and asked me if I was feeling okay. This is when things got strange. Part 2 of how I found out my childhood best friend was a ghost. The more details I told Irene about Katie, the more she looked at me like I was mental. She assured me it was just me and her in the house when my mom would drop me off. I was shocked. I went home and asked my mom about Katie, and she gave me the same confused look Irene just gave me and told me she didn't know what I was talking about. I couldn't believe it. How was I the only one who remembered her? I was starting to think I was going insane. It even crossed my mind that maybe Katie was an imaginary friend that I made up when I was little. However, I vividly remember playing with her every time I went over. I thought about it for days and I couldn't get it out of my head. The mystery kept me up at night, and I even dreamt about my old childhood friend. I decided to do some research on Irene's house, and my heart sank to my stomach when I realized what happened. I discovered the first person to ever own the house was a man named Patrick Wells back in 1941. I tried to find anything I could on Katie, but nothing came up. I remember Katie talking about her dad Pat when I was younger. It finally made sense how she never knew about any recent events I would bring up and why her and Irene would never communicate. I realized that I was the only one who saw Katie because she wasn't alive. I had been playing with a spirit all that time growing up. Story time about how I had to choose between my family and the love of my life. I come from a pretty well-off family. Growing up, I never had to worry about anything because it was always taken care of by my parents. They were pretty religious, and we would attend church every week. From a young age, I knew that I was attracted to girls. I also knew that my parents wouldn't accept it, so I buried my feelings deep. Luckily, I was never tempted because I never met anyone that I had feelings for. Fast forward to my senior year of high school. I was on the volleyball team, and a new girl named Juliet had transferred to our school and joined the team. We quickly became friends, but there was always a lingering connection between us. I had easily developed a crush on her, but I knew that I couldn't act on it. During spring break, we went to a party, and liquid courage led me to confessing my feelings for her. When I told her everything, she kissed me, and I felt butterflies fluttering in my stomach. We secretly started dating after this, and only my older sister and best friend knew about it. However, the more time I spent with Juliet, the more I knew that she was the one. One night, I finally built up the courage to tell my parents. Unfortunately, the reaction was worse than I expected. They yelled, cried, and told me they'd never accept it. Then they told me they would cut me off and kick me out if I kept seeing her. I was scared and didn't know what to do. Part 2 of how I had to choose between my family and the love of my life. After my parents gave me the ultimatum, I was terrified. The next day after school, I met up with Juliet with the intention of breaking things off. When I told her what happened, she comforted me and told me that it was okay. She said she understood it was an impossible choice and wouldn't blame me for choosing my family. She just wanted me to be happy and do what was best for me. Juliet loved me enough to let me go, even though I knew it was killing her. This was the deciding factor for me. As much as my parents loved me, they didn't accept me for who I am, but Juliet always had. While my parents were at work, we went to my house and packed my things. I called my older sister, and she took me in with open arms. I cried to her for a while because I knew that I would never speak to my parents again. A few years later, my sister was getting married, and she wanted me to be her maid of honor. Juliet and I were still together and happier than ever. I knew that my family was going to be at the wedding, but I didn't care what they thought anymore. I walked in hand with Juliet and saw my parents' face drop at our entrance. The rest of the family made eyes as well, but we ignored them and enjoyed our night. A year later, I proposed to Juliet, and she said yes. Even though I lost my parents, I don't regret my decision. Eventually, we'll make our own family. Story time about how I found out my boyfriend was married. I had just moved to a new state and decided to download Bumble to meet new people. One day, I matched with this great guy named Alex. He had a good job, his own house, never married, and no kids. We lived in the same town, and we started spending a lot of time together. However, I noticed that Alex started doing some weird things. He started coming over unannounced. Before he left, he would always check to make sure that the doors and windows were locked, and when I wasn't with him, he was always blowing up my phone constantly asking what I was doing. A few months into our relationship, he introduced me to his family, and I introduced him to mine. It also turned out that we had a ton of mutual friends. He knew my new best friend Laura and her husband from the gym. When we made the connection, he made it clear that he didn't want me being friends with her anymore. Anytime I would bring her up in conversation, he would get agitated. Laura and I were both teachers at the same school. One afternoon, she came storming into my classroom. She told me that she had just had a girls' night with the girls from the gym. They were all showing pictures of their wedding since one of the girls recently got engaged. That's when she noticed that my boyfriend was in pictures with another woman. It turns out he was the husband of one of the girls that she was having dinner with. Part 2 of how I found out my boyfriend was married. When my best friend showed me the pictures of my boyfriend and his wife, I was livid. I saw red and immediately texted him telling him to come over to my house to talk. He ended up calling me on the way home from work but refused to come over to my house until I told him what I wanted to talk about. When I told him, he automatically started blaming my best friend and her husband for telling his business, saying it wasn't theirs to tell. I felt so angry and betrayed, but most of all, I felt stupid for not knowing. I told him it was over and that I was done with him. I didn't hear from him again after that. He moved away and no one at the gym had seen him either. A few months after everything happened, his wife posted on Facebook saying that she was getting a divorce. It turns out that he had beaten her up so badly that she ended up in the hospital. This abuse had apparently been going on for months. I felt that it was a blessing in disguise that I had gotten out of that relationship. Seeing how controlling he was within just a few months of dating, who knows what would have happened if I didn't find out and kept dating him. Luckily, I haven't seen or heard of him since 2018 and I hope that I never do. Story time about how I had to get a restraining order against my creepy neighbor. I found a good deal on a rental and moved into a new neighborhood. It seemed like a decent area and I was excited for a fresh start. My friend was helping me move my stuff into my new house when my neighbor noticed and came over to welcome me. He seemed nice and he even offered to help us unload the heavy furniture, which I accepted. A couple nights later, someone rang my doorbell and it was him. He brought me a plate of cookies and welcomed me to the neighborhood again. I thought he was just friendly and trying to be nice, but he kept doing things for me. Whenever he mowed his lawn, he would come over and mow mine as well without asking. I told him he didn't have to do that, but he insisted and said it wasn't any trouble. He brought me over food every few nights and always said he made extra and wanted to share. I wanted him to stop, so I told him that I was going on a strict diet and politely declined the next time he tried it. At this point, I could tell he was being overly friendly and it started getting weird. One morning, I came outside and he was washing my car. I asked him what he was doing and he replied that he just finished washing his and figured he'd do mine as well. I told him I appreciate it, but I didn't want my car washed and he shouldn't have done it without my permission. Unfortunately, things kept getting weirder from here. Part 2 of why I had to get a restraining order against my creepy neighbor. My new neighbor kept doing unwanted favors for me. Whenever I asked him to stop, he would just ignore me and do it anyway. It got creepy when I got a package in the mail that I didn't order. It was a new keyboard that I was talking about getting myself for Christmas in my live stream on Twitch a few nights prior. No one on my Twitch stream had my address. Upon further inspection, there was a note inside the box that said, "Here's that new keyboard you were talking about, from your neighbor Jim." I never told Jim about my Twitch account, and I had no clue he watched it, which led me to believe he'd been looking me up online. I was super creeped out at this point and was going to tell him to leave me alone for good the next time I saw him. The last straw was when I came home from work and this man was hanging up Christmas lights on my house for the holidays. I was shocked. I got out of the car and immediately went off on him. I threatened to call the police and get a restraining order on him if he didn't leave me alone. Apparently, he didn't get the message because he sent me flowers with an apology card the next day and tried to contact me on 3 social media platforms. I contacted the police when he wouldn't stop and filed for a civil harassment restraining order. After this, Jim stopped, but I still ended up moving a couple months later to get away from him. This is why you need a security system for your house. A few years ago, I was renting a house in Northern California. The neighborhood was just outside of the suburbs. It seemed like the perfect balance of having space and having nice neighbors close enough not to feel isolated. The area had no streetlights, so it was very dark at night, but it didn't bother me. I got home from work one evening in midwinter. It was a cloudy night, so pulling up, I only saw what my headlights and porch light illuminated. When I got out of my car, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. That was odd as I had never smelled that before around my house, but I didn't see anyone nearby, so I ignored it and went inside. I had just gotten off a shift with a few hours of overtime and I was exhausted. It wasn't even 7 yet, but I decided to call it an early night. I woke up sometime later when I heard a noise inside of my house. I wasn't immediately worried because my best friend had a spare key and would sometimes come over. However, he'd always text me and let me know, but when I checked my phone, there were no messages. I called out my friend's name. There were a few seconds of silence before I heard someone stomping as they ran through the bottom floor. I leapt out of bed and ran to the closet. They were already up the stairs by the time I opened the door and stepped inside. I was terrified. That's when I heard them thunder down my hallway. Part 2 why you need a security system for your house. The house had 2 bedrooms on either hallway and a bathroom. The bedroom doors were closed, but the bathroom door was creaked open. I was so lucky in that moment because he sprinted to the bathroom. That gave me just enough time to open the attic access in my closet and pull myself up. As I lifted myself, I heard the person run towards my room. I had just pulled my feet inside when my bedroom door burst open. He walked in and stopped. When he didn't see me, he went and checked the other room, then came back and turned on the light. A moment later, he ripped open my closet door. After a few seconds, he stepped away and I heard a loud crash come from my room, followed by a scream of frustration and anger. Then he went downstairs. I had left my phone when I ran for the closet and wasn't sure I could climb down without him hearing. After some time, the noises stopped. I counted to 1,000, then climbed down to call the police. My bed had been flipped, furniture knocked over, and all my things destroyed. The only thing missing was a knife from my kitchen. The police found that the side door had been forced open by a crowbar. They also found cigarette butts and an empty tube used for drugs. They think he had been watching the house for a while. I installed some security on the house after this. I can't imagine what would have happened if he had come to my room first. Story time about how my roommate tried to steal my boyfriend. When I was 18, my parents told me that I had to move out. I found a really nice apartment that was pretty spacious, but I definitely couldn't make rent on my own. I put out an ad for a roommate and found a girl named Jenny who seemed really put together. When Jenny moved in, everything was fine. We got along well, but didn't overstep any boundaries. When the pandemic hit, my boyfriend started staying over more. Jenny didn't have a problem with this, as we had plenty of room and didn't bother her. Over time, I started noticing little things Jenny would say and do. Whenever my boyfriend came over, she made it a point to wear as little clothing as possible, but when he wasn't there, she would be in full-on PJs. My boyfriend and I had date nights a couple times a week at home. She would invite herself to our date nights and solely focus on talking to my boyfriend the whole time, laughing a little too hard at his jokes. I'm not easily intimidated, so I didn't read much into it and didn't think that she'd ever actually try anything. One weekend when I was sleeping in, my boyfriend woke me up. He had gone for a jog and was making his post-workout smoothie in the kitchen, and that's when Jenny approached him. Apparently, she told him that he should stay and hang out with her when I went to work instead of leaving when I leave like he usually does. She only got more flirty with him from here. Part 2 of how my roommate tried to steal my boyfriend. My roommate Jenny continued passively flirting with him. One morning, she came into the kitchen wearing one of his t-shirts that we put in the wash the previous night. When I asked her about it, she said she didn't know that it was his and she found it in her laundry basket. She changed and threw the shirt at him with a smile. A few nights later, she sent him a picture on Instagram in her bra and immediately apologized, saying she sent it to him on accident. He quickly sent me the screenshots of the messages. The final straw was when she tried to make a move on my boyfriend one night when I was running late from work. He was waiting for me in my room when she barged in intoxicated. She tried to straddle him and kiss him, but he quickly pushed her off. When I got home and confronted her, she flipped out and started cursing me out. She locked herself in her bedroom the rest of the night and wouldn't come out to talk to me. The next morning, I told her that she needed to move out. The following month she did, but that didn't stop her from taking a final shot at my boyfriend. She messaged him on Instagram and asked him to come over to her new place. She said she would keep it a secret and would do anything he wanted. Obviously, he showed me and I posted the screenshots of her thirsty ass and tagged her.
I was a product of an affair between my mom and dad. My mom was already married and had a 1-year-old daughter. She wanted to abort me, but my dad begged her and paid her a hefty sum. She signed over all rights and I didn't see her for my 14 years of life. She recently contacted my dad saying she wanted to get to know me better, and he said it's entirely up to me. I was skeptical but decided to meet her. I've been talking to my mom's side for about 2 months when at a family gathering they all sat me down and said the reason they contacted me was because my half-sister was having kidney failure and was basically dying. At a loss for words, I got up and left. I told my dad and he said it's entirely up to me, but I should get tested just to see before I make my decision. So I did. When my mom found out, she thought this was me agreeing and told everyone the good news. I did a lot of thinking and I decided I would not be donating my kidney. This family had done nothing for me. The only reason they tried to get in contact was for my kidney. I don't want anything to do with them. I got loads of hateful calls and messages, but decided to stand by my decision. My stepsister called me and said I'm a douche for giving her false hope. People are saying I'm wrong because I can save a life. My stepsister did nothing wrong. But I feel so used. Am I the asshole for not giving my sister my kidney? My fiance's girl best friend has never liked me. We were all hanging out when Madison and Michael came out from a room with Madison crying. Michael looks at me and starts swearing and says I'm a raging bitch. Being hormonal and pregnant, I start crying and asking what's wrong. Proceeds to tell me about the text message I sent Madison. I told her I would not allow her near our child. I only sent this text message after the many racist texts she sent me about my child and I, me being biracial and all. Instead of hearing me out, Michael kicked me out of the house that we shared. On my way out, I felt a lower cramp in my abdomen, and I thought nothing of this because I was not due for another 3 weeks. When I flinched from the pain, Michael told me to stop faking. On my way to my mom's, I felt a gush of water and immediately turned the car around so that I would make it to the hospital. I tried calling Michael numerous times, but my call was quickly declined. I gave birth to our baby all by myself. I decided to do something and post all the hurtful messages Madison sent me on Facebook. Michael calls me and I inform him about my whereabouts and he shows up 42 minutes later. He has tried to apologize multiple times, but I don't think I can forgive him. I went through the pain of pushing out an 8-pound baby all by myself because he chose to listen to his best friend over his fiancé. Should I forgive him? This is an ongoing mess that continues to haunt me. My sister is recently engaged to her boyfriend of many years. He proposed to her at one of our family barbecues and I was really happy for them until I saw the ring. My sister had hinted that her and her boyfriend were discussing tying the knot and we discussed rings at length. I went online and searched for the type of ring she said she was interested in and happened across a very unique and pretty ring on Etsy, but it had a fake middle stone. As soon as I saw the ring, I recognized it. Everyone knows they're supposed to spend at least 3 to 4 months pay on an engagement ring. He has a good paying job and 4 months wages for him would be at least 8 to 10K at an estimate. I know for a fact that this ring was $450. I waited until the proposal was over and asked the couple for a quiet word, but that had the opposite effect as I was overheard by the entire family. I told my sister I had seen her ring online and it wasn't a real diamond or even expensive. I accused her boyfriend of trying to cheap out of one of the most important gifts of her entire life. She burst into tears and said she gave him a budget of $400. She didn't want a real diamond. She's lost every piece of jewelry she's owned and she didn't want to be devastated by losing this if she ever does. Thought I was doing my sisterly duty by pointing out the fake ring. Am I the asshole for telling my sister? I have a 16-year-old babysitter who watches my 4 and 8-year-old. She watches my kids from 9 to 7 from Monday through Saturday, so I asked if she liked anything stocked up in the pantry or the fridge. She mentioned that she really likes seltzer water and I bought them for the first month, but honestly, I forgot after a while and never kept any in the fridge. A few days ago, I bought hard seltzers for me and my husband and didn't think anything of it. While I'm at work, she messaged me to say if I can come home early because she's not feeling well. I asked her to try and hold out until the end of the day. Not too long after, she called me crying, saying that something was wrong and she had to go home. She was drunk clearly. She had drank the hard seltzers that were in the fridge. I told her to leave and she walked home. She called me the next day crying that she didn't know that the hard seltzers had alcohol in them. Both her parents were alcoholics and she was diagnosed with PTSD regarding alcohol. She never planned on drinking in general. I told her not to come back as she put my children in danger. She says she really didn't know and she cares deeply about my children and would never ever drink or put them in danger. She really can't afford to lose this job. I told her to find a real job and that it wasn't my fault she got drunk. My husband says I'm being very rude and that she did try to reach out when she wasn't feeling well. And my kids are upset to see her go. My boyfriend is really into cars. Recently discovered a charity project where they fixed up an old Jaguar and it's worth around $300,000. You could buy a $50 raffle ticket to win the car and the money went towards a good cause. My boyfriend is broke at the moment, so I offered to go halves with the ticket. He didn't want to because then the car wouldn't be his completely. I wasn't too worried about it and didn't mention it again. I did, however, buy a ticket for myself. Well, I won, and on the 1st of next month, I will be the owner of the car. My boyfriend found out he was really excited until I told him I was going to sell the car and put half of the money in my savings and invest the other half. He said I can't sell our car without consulting him. I told him it's my car and I can do whatever I want. He now claims it was all a big misunderstanding and apparently wanted to go halves but hasn't got around to giving me the money yet. I call BS on it, but he keeps saying that we're a couple and we should make this decision together. I still am planning on going ahead and selling the car and keeping the money to myself. I do see a future with him, but it was my money and my ticket. Am I the asshole for not wanting to go 50-50 and keeping the money all towards myself? When I was in my 20s, I froze 10 eggs. When my husband and I were ready to have kids, I ended up getting pregnant naturally. I'm currently 35 and had my baby a year ago. We do want 2 more children, so we will likely use a few of the eggs. My sister, who is 30, has a 12-year-old daughter and has recently gotten married. Even though she was young, my sister's first pregnancy was a struggle. She's been told that she will probably not be able to have another baby. So her and her husband asked me if they can have 1 or 2 of my stored eggs. I instantly told her no, I would feel really weird about it. I then told her if she paid me a substantial amount of money, I would let her have 2 eggs. I gave her a price of $5,000. She's really torn up and blaming me for not being able to enjoy sharing a child with her husband. I told her she can find a donor egg somewhere else, but she said she wants a baby related by blood. If she can't afford $5,000 for the egg, she can't afford another baby. She has now gone to whine to any family member that will listen. My parents have been begging me to help my sister start a family. They said if her husband decides to leave her because he wants kids, it'll be my fault. Other people have been calling me to shame me for not giving her the eggs. I feel for my sister, but these are my eggs. Now I'm sure many of us have encountered little shits in supermarkets. Kids running around, knocking things over, being rude, but the worst are the biters. Today I was shopping in the grocery store when a biter got me. He broke skin too and I started bleeding. When I saw the blood on his teeth and the grin he had, the gears started turning and I got an idea. Made my eyes go wide and started screaming, shit, fuck, no. My good friend was there too and he instantly picked up on what I was doing. He started shouting, fuck, maybe he didn't get it. Shit! By now, the kid is scared shitless and starts crying, and instantly, his mom appears out of nowhere and starts getting pissy at us for yelling at her kid. Here's the kicker. I look her straight in the eye and say, ma'am, get your son tested as soon as possible. He just bit me and I'm HIV positive. And now there's silence, not a peep in the entire store. Brat knows he just fucked up big time because his mom isn't defending his ass. He stares at me wide-eyed and I walk away from them to buy my groceries. All while blood is dripping from my calf, making a nice little trail on the floor. Just as we're about to leave, we start to hear the mom sobbing like the little she is. My best friend is getting married. Neither of us have any sisters, so we're both the closest the other has to one. Her fiancé comes from an extremely mega Catholic family. She pulled me aside this past weekend and told me I wouldn't be able to go to the ceremony, which is in a traditional Catholic church. Her fiancé's parents, who are paying for almost all of the wedding, do not want anyone who is not baptized, no one with kids out of wedlock, and no unmarried couples who are living together. I have 2 children from 2 different people and I didn't marry either of their fathers. She said a lot of people are being uninvited to the ceremony, but I'm still welcome to come to the reception. That's just their demands for footing the bill for everything. I was fucking pissed. I'm used to being judged for being a young unmarried mom, but not by a person I trusted. I told her I won't be going to the wedding at all. Reception be damned. She started crying and said it wasn't her choice, but she couldn't change their minds. I told her she's a hypocrite because she's already slept with her fiancé, and if she really is choosing money for a single day over me and my kids who she claims she loves. She pretty much begged me to reconsider, but I told her I respected myself and my children too much for that. I know it was a hard choice for her to make, but I feel like shit being judged for my kids and my past choices. Am I the asshole for telling her I won't come to her wedding? I focused on my career, and since I am single, I wasn't sure if having a baby would ever happen. So when I found out I was pregnant, I was overjoyed. My brother is married but has made it very clear that he will be child-free. I got a shirt for my nephew to wear that says, "This is what an awesome big cousin looks like." I wanted him to wear it during our family dinner. My sister was the first one to notice the shirt, and everyone immediately began to assume it was my sister-in-law who was pregnant. I wasn't hurt at them assuming this because she is married. I was hurt because my sister-in-law didn't try to correct them. She just went along with it and began to rub her flat belly while laughing. I tried to explain, but they all didn't hear me and just continued to fawn over my sister-in-law. I got up and went home. I received multiple texts saying I'm an asshole for making this all about me and I'm just bitter. Morning, my sister-in-law must have finally let it slip that she is not pregnant. They have all now called me to apologize, saying that they all just got caught up in the moment. My sister-in-law sent me a message that said the way I chose to announce was how she wanted to do it if she ever got pregnant. She said that since she is not ever having a child, she wanted to experience what the moment would be like. To me, there's no fixing this. I will eventually forgive them, but I don't want to do a second announcement so they feel better. Am I the asshole? Today's my niece's birthday and she just went to college, so I thought I'd get her a laptop for her birthday. Now, I'm a student myself, but I still want to give her something special, so I searched for a great used laptop and I found a decent Toshiba. I sold my PSP and some other things so I can afford it. So there we were at the dinner table opening presents, and she opened mine and had this grim look on her face. "This is it? I thought you'd buy me a brand new one." "No, I can't afford it. It's the best I can do." "Well, I want a brand new one, not this. This sucks. Worst present ever." She then shoved the laptop and box across the table and it fell on the floor. I picked it up and walked out, and my cousin tried to stop me, but I just said I would never give her anything ever again. She even had the nerve to call back and ask for the laptop. What is the most ungrateful thing you've seen someone do? My boyfriend of 4 years proposed to me. I was extremely shocked because our relationship has been rocky the past year. As surprising as it is, I still felt overwhelmed with joy and excitement. He seemed thrilled and even had tears in his eyes while asking. I felt so emotional. The person I had loved for 4 years had asked me to marry them. But the thought of the randomness of the proposal couldn't leave my head. I had practically slept on separate couches for the past 3 months. It was unsettling and confused me. Fast forward to the day after Valentine's Day and my fiancé breaks down and tells me that he can't marry me. He said it wouldn't be right and he wouldn't be doing it for the right reasons. I was confused and lost, and all I could do was question him about why he proposed and make me so happy. Finally, he confessed to me that my parents offered him $100,000 if he would propose to me. My family is decently well off, and they promised him that after marriage he would be well taken care of and won't have any struggle. This was something that he said he couldn't turn down, but he felt wrong and sick about living a lie. I went to confront my parents and they claimed it was true, but they only did it for my happiness since it's something they knew I wanted so bad. Am I the asshole for not continuing a relationship with my parents? This is now the hardest time of my life and I feel extremely guilty, but also have so much emotion and hatred for them.
Story time on how I was almost kidnapped. Okay, you guys, so today's story is my own. Let's get into it. Okay, so boom. I was in the 9th grade when this happened and my brother was in the 12th. We always took a bus to a bus stop that was 5 minutes away from our house and we walked the rest of the way home. I had super strict parents, so I didn't have a cell phone. This detail comes into play later on. So on this particular day, our routine changed. My brother had to complete some community service hours, so we were going to separate. I was going to go home and my brother was going to go the opposite direction to the daycare that was also 5 minutes away from the bus stop. The bus dropped us off, and before my brother walked away, he told me to be careful, and I was like, yeah, thinking this was going to be a regular walk home. But I was definitely wrong about that. About 3 minutes into me walking, when my brother was no longer in sight, a car slowly pulls up next to me and puts his window down, like for part 2. Part 2 on how I was almost kidnapped. Okay, so I'm walking home alone and my brother is no longer in sight and the streets are kind of empty. A car slowly pulls up next to me and a guy puts his window down. A man who looks like he's in his 40s yells out, "Hello, beautiful." I kept walking and ignoring him and he got louder, and now he's following me in the same pace as I'm walking with his car. "Hey, what's your name?" That's what he yelled, but he said it so loud that it scared me and I started walking even faster. He drives up next to me again and leans over to the passenger seat to try to open the door and told me to get in. At this point, I'm jogging. So he parked his car and started jogging right after me. I full blown started running, and guess what he did? He went back into his car and started driving to me. At this point, I'm 30 seconds away from my house and I don't want to go there so he knows where I live. So I go to the gas station and he follows me, like for part 3. Part 3 on how I was almost kidnapped. So like I said, I started running and he got back into his car, and I was 30 seconds away from my house, so I didn't want him to know where I lived, so I ran to the gas station and he followed me. So now I'm in the gas station acting like I'm buying something, and this guy literally parked his car and walks inside and comes right up to me. He then says, "Hello, beautiful, what's your name?" I don't know why I answered. I just was scared, so I said my name was Victoria, which is not, it's Valerie, but I said Victoria. Then he grabs my arm and says, "Victoria, you're coming home with me tonight." He starts to squeeze my arm and grips it really tight. Y'all, I was so scared. I don't even know why I didn't scream. I was just like in fear. But I'll be damned if this man was gonna take me home. He whispered in my ear to walk to the car, and at that moment, I screamed to the cashier. Like for part 4 on how I was almost kidnapped. So like I said, he told me to walk to the car, and at that moment, I screamed to the cashier. He's squeezing my hand and he's trying to take me. All the cashier did was look up and said, "What's going on?" And that man ran to his car. I'm talking about bolted. He was gone, flash. I stayed with the gas station lady for about 30 minutes after that because I was so scared to walk home. And then eventually a nurse that was also in the gas station who was waiting with me walked me home. I'm still grateful for that nurse to this day. Thankfully, that was a gas station that was close to our house, and my family always went there, so they knew all of us. The gas station lady told my family what happened, and they got me a phone the very next day. And now my brother always walked me home first before going to go do his community service hours. It's crazy because that was the very first time I walked home alone and something happened. Even if you think you're good, be careful because you never can know what happens. Be safe out there, guys. Story time on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. Okay, so boom, my mom and my dad had been together for 14 years up until this point. And my mom was actually pregnant with my soon-to-be little sister. My mom and my dad almost never argued. They had a pretty solid relationship, or so I thought. And my mom was very close to her twin sister for obvious reasons. I mean, they're twins. Well, one day when my parents was at work, I decided to skip school with my friends and go to the movie theaters instead. But I needed some money. So I was planning on going home to get money out of my mom's purse since she never noticed when I took anything. I assumed the house was empty because I was usually the first one home, then my mom, then my dad. Remember that because that's important for later on in the story. Y'all, I ran into the house and I went straight for my parents' room. I mean, I was loud. I didn't hear any moaning, y'all. Guess he was doing a bad job. But anyways, I opened that door and there it was. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I opened the door into the room and there it was. My dad and my mom's sister literally staring at me in shock. I closed that door so fast and ran to my room, I didn't even give him a chance to react. Y'all, I didn't even realize that wasn't my mom. Don't worry though, because I eventually did. Stick with me. But yeah, I was panicking on how I was going to explain why I skipped school and that I just walked in on them. I was waiting for them to come talk to me, but they never did. About 4 hours later, my real mom came home and screamed that she got food for us. Now remember what I said. I'm usually the first home, then my mom, then my dad. So my mom only bought food for me and her, assuming that her husband wasn't gonna be home till later. So anyways, I went downstairs and told my mom sorry about earlier. She was confused and said what happened earlier. And this is when it got real, y'all. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I told my mom I'm sorry about what happened earlier, and she said, what happened earlier? Y'all, my stupid ass. I really thought that was my mom's way of trying to act like nothing ever happened. So I just laughed. But then I said, where's dad's food? Then my mom said, you know he doesn't come home from work till later, so the food will spoil by then. Y'all, at that very moment, it hit me. I realized that when I opened the door for that split second, I didn't see my mom have a pregnant belly. So out of nowhere, I made that, oh my gosh, I just realized something noise. You know that noise. It goes like this. So my mom's still confused, asking, what's wrong? I said, Mom, were you here earlier? She said, of course not, honey. I was at work the whole day. I screamed, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad is cheating on you with Lily. My mom immediately stopped eating. Like for part 4. Part 4 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I screamed, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad is cheating on you with Lily. Then my mom immediately stopped eating. My mom looked at me so serious and said, what are you talking about? Then I explained everything to her. The anger my mom had is just something I can't explain. Let me remind you that my mom is pregnant and she's finding out that her husband is cheating on her with her twin sister while pregnant, and she's finding out by her daughter. My dad was a dead man. Once he came home, his life fell apart. He cried and begged my mom not to leave him, but nope, she divorced him and took him for everything he got, might I add. My mom couldn't even look at her sister, so their relationship was never the same. And it doesn't help that my mom slept with her boyfriend a year later. My mom is pet at tea. I still get to see my dad, but I always have that scene in the back of my head. But hey, I never got in trouble for ditching school, so it all worked out. Story time on how a black 15-year-old girl refused to give up her seat to a white woman. And no, this is not the story of Rosa Parks. It is the story of Claudette Colvin, and she actually gave up her seat 9 months before Rosa Parks. Claudette lived in Montgomery, Alabama, where at the time they tried to keep black people in their place. But that didn't faze Miss Claudette. She was angered by the case of Jeremiah Reeves, an older classmate at Booker T. Washington High School, who was indicted in 1952 and later executed for allegedly raping a white woman. Because of this, she went on to join the NAACP Youth Council and took to flaunting her natural hair in defiance of the pressure to have it straightened. On March 2nd of 1955, Claudette was riding the bus home from school when the driver ordered her and her classmates to vacate a row of seats to accommodate one white woman, but she refused. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how a 15-year-old black girl refused to give up her seat to a white woman. So like I said, the bus driver ordered Claudette and her classmates to vacate a row of seats to accommodate one white woman. All 3 of her classmates got up, but Claudette did not budge. She refused and said she knew her constitutional rights. They responded by roughly yanking her off of the bus, handcuffing her, and placing her in a cell. Claudette cried and prayed until her mother and pastor came a few hours later to bail her out. Claudette caught the attention of local black leaders who helped her get legal representation that led to most of her charges getting dropped. The leaders wanted to use her as an example as justification for a citywide bus boycott, but they thought she was too young and emotional. When it was revealed that Claudette had been impregnated by an older man later that summer, it confirmed their sentiment. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how a black 15-year-old girl refused to give up her seat to a white woman. So like I said, once they found out that Claudette was pregnant by an older man, they said that she was the wrong person for the movement. The right person arrived 9 months later when Rosa Parks, a 42-year-old seamstress and NAACP secretary, made headlines for her arrest on December 1st, prompting the launch of the Montgomery bus boycott the following day and the national rise of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. With all that being said, Claudette sparked legal action that led to the end of Alabama's segregated bus laws and enabled a widespread civil rights movement to pick up steam. A big thanks to Miss Claudette Colvin. Story time on how I sent my nudes to my dad. I'm talking full, clear, tunnel vision to my cat child. Just know this story ends with me getting my behind beat. So I was 17 at the time, and I had a boyfriend who was also 17, and we've been together for 1 year. We were in the same grade, but we always had different classes, so I usually seen him during lunch. My parents were super strict and religious, so we had to keep our relationship on the low. So my boyfriend always asked me to send him nudes, but I never had the guts to send it to him. One day over the phone, me and my boyfriend had a heart-to-heart, and he told me that he would never break my trust and that I can trust him with everything. So I decided I was going to surprise him for his birthday and send him the you-know. The night before his birthday, I decided I was going to send him the nudes exactly at 12 a.m. Biggest mistake ever. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I sent my nudes to my dad. Like I said, I decided to surprise my boyfriend with the you-know for his birthday. When the clock struck midnight was when exactly I was going to send the pictures and wish him a happy birthday. On my phone, my boyfriend's name was David with a red heart emoji, and my dad was under dad with the 2 pink heart emojis. 2 very different contacts, but at the same time, way too close. I took the pictures with nothing on. I'm talking full birthday suit. I bent down in front of that mirror, legs wide open, and one in a bed with my selfie stick. I was literally so anxious that I didn't even realize what happened. When I went to go text my boyfriend, my dad texted me. I thought I just swiped up the message to get it out my way, but instead I hit the message. So once I hit the message, it switched me from texting my boyfriend to texting my dad. If you have an iPhone, you know exactly what I mean. But anyways, I didn't realize that I was texting my dad, so I went and sent the nudes. Once I found out, I literally wanted to die. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how I sent my nudes to my dad. Like I said, I hit my dad's message by mistake and ended up sending the pictures to him. I still didn't realize I texted my dad, so I just threw my phone on the bed, anxiously waiting for my boyfriend's reply. 2.5 seconds later, my dad barges into the house and is literally screaming at the top of his lungs. I was actually confused until my dad said, "Why would you disrespect your body like that?" Once I realized everything, it was already too late. I got the beating of my lifetime and my phone was taken away, but only for like a week because of safety purposes. When I went to school, I explained everything to my boyfriend and he was so shocked. He did say he appreciated even the attempt. I eventually took nudes directly on my boyfriend's phone and we're still currently together. But for the rest of my school year, I had to deal with even more strict parents. Watch who you text, guys. Story time on how I had a one-night stand with my Uber driver and my girlfriend heard the whole thing. Okay, so a quick rundown on how we got here. It was a girls' night with me and my friends while we vacationed in Miami. We only had 3 days in Miami and we were on day 2. So the next day, I literally had to catch my flight and get back to Kentucky. Anyways, we went to a club in Miami called Story and it was lit. And Tory Lanez just happened to be performing that night. How I got a little too lit. My girls was there for me, of course, but I ended up throwing up in the girls' bathroom and my friends had to be there for me. It was time for me to go. I didn't want to ruin my friend's night, so I told them that I would meet them at the hotel and I'll just Uber home. They were so against it, but I reassured them that I would be fine and that I wasn't as drunk as they thought. I told them that I would keep one of them on the phone with me and that I would put my location on. And we all agreed. And this is where it gets crazy. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I had a one-night stand with my Uber driver and my girlfriend heard the whole thing. So like I said, me and my friends agreed that I would Uber home, call one of them, and share my location. So my Uber gets here and my friends walk me to the car and then they go back into the club. And this is where it goes down. So I called one of my friends, let's call her Jess, and she just stayed on the phone with me and told me not to hang up. All of a sudden, my girlfriend back in Kentucky gave me a call. So I told my friend Jess that I would call her back. At the time, me and my girlfriend had issues, so I didn't really want to stay on the phone with her, so I told her that I would call her back. When I hung up, instead of calling my friend Jessica back, I just called my girlfriend back again. Now, me thinking I called my friend Jess back, I put the phone down and laid my head on the door, not paying attention whatsoever to who I actually just called. Then my Uber driver said, "Wow, you have great friends." I looked up for the first time to see a fine, sexy man staring at me. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how I had a one-night stand with my Uber driver and my girlfriend heard the whole thing. Like I said, I looked up and seen a fine, sexy Uber driver staring back at me. Mind you, I don't even know that I'm on the phone with my girlfriend. We had small talk on how I had great friends and then I eventually asked him how much he made off of Uber. Child, he said, "Enough to take you out." I just smiled and said, "Unfortunately, my flight leaves tomorrow." So now we're in front of the hotel, but I don't want to get out. I don't know if it was the lick in my system, but I was trying to get laid. I was kind of in that whatever happens in Miami stays in Miami type of vibe. But again, didn't know my girlfriend was literally on my phone listening to everything. I was so sick of my girlfriend's BS, so I just wanted to have fun. So I told him, "Come back here, I don't bite." He replied he wants to, but maybe if I wasn't as lit. Then I said, "Oh, you must be scared." He came to the back and said, "Scared of what?" And it went down like for part 4. Part 5 on how I had a one-night stand with my Uber driver and my girlfriend heard the whole thing. So like I said, my girlfriend blocked me on everything and my flight back home was literally anxiety attacks. When I got off of my flight, literally everyone from my high school was talking